So I'm Deb Hishon from GfK. I'm the Media Measurement Director for Australia and New Zealand. I've got the privilege today to be up here with Jo Dick, and we've got high expectations to meet. Thank you, Peter. Don't know if we'll meet those, but we'll do our very best. So today, Jo is actually going to be sharing with you some really cool and innovative research that we've been doing, or CRA have been doing in Australia about how to better sell radio, particularly educating media agencies about the strength of radio in our market. Before we get into those nuggets of wisdom, I'm going to take you through 1 year on with Radio 360. Now, Radio 360 was a significant change to our audience methodology, to our radio ratings in Australia. And I wanted to just give you an idea of, now we're 1 year on, how it's been perceived in the marketplace and what we're doing next with our audience methodology in our market. Before I get into that though, I'm just going to touch on AI, because I don't think any presentation now at any conference has any validity unless there's AI discussion in it. Am I right? Yeah? So what I've done is I've taken some cheeky AI tools off the web and asked it to talk in an Australian accent, so that's going to be a tough challenge to begin with, and I've brought to life some feedback, real life feedback from our networks and our media agencies about how Radio 360 is being perceived in the marketplace. And then we can assess to see if it's better than having someone on stage like myself, or we can switch to AI in the future for all presentations. So why did we need to change? So if we cast our mind back a few years ago when we started on our measurement innovation journey in our market, the industry decided they needed to evolve radio audience measurement. There was a perception in the market that radio diaries were not the most cutting-edge way to capture. Now, we know as researchers that it is actually the most efficient way to capture all radio listening. However, we wanted to enhance measurement confidence and look to how we can digitise our audience measurement system, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The industry, commercial radio and audio, also wanted to capitalise on the digital audience potential that is growing quickly in our market, and again, Jo will talk about that too. And keeping up with market trends. In the last 12 to 18 months, across Australia's media landscape, all of our traditional media, out of home, television, press, digital, have all had measurement enhancements. So we needed to bring radio kicking and screaming into the new era, and then tapping into unlocking our growth potential. So first of all, just a quick reminder of what Radio 360 is. It's taking the diary system where we monitor 50,000 respondents across the country. They complete a diary for a week and it captures all radio listening. 80% of that is now done online using an e-diary and 20% face-to-face. We then integrate the streaming data, and this is the really innovative thing that we're doing in our market. We take the volume that we capture directly from the radio station's server logs. Now, this volume gives us real-time data straight from source. And then we apply all of our Radio 360 modelling to it. We have a co-listening variable. We use Bayesian probability modelling. We have a Sensic tag that enables us to see audience movement across stations. And we reinsert after we take device level data and transfer it to people level and reinsert it back into the currency. Side by side to this, we now have, for the first time in Australia, an audio panel where we have our respondents wearing our GfK Media Watch. Now, this captures all audio that the individual is exposed to, and we use that to validate the streaming information coming through, as well as a lot of other key things that we're doing in our market. What Radio 360 has enabled us to do is separate AM and FM listening to streaming listening for the first time with confidence and with greater accuracy, because we are taking all of those digital streams live from the station. The Media Watch panel has given us the ability to do event measurement, and I'll talk about that as well in a couple of slides, and also out-of-survey insights. So I could really talk about the numbers and I could talk about the market potential for 30 minutes. We're doing a research presentation tomorrow, so please come and join me. I'm talking about our audiences in our market. But how do you measure the impact of changing a currency? So we looked at it in a couple of different ways. The first way was, have we been able to remain consistent with our ratings? And have we improved the credibility and the evolution of our system? So this is where I'm going to call on some help from my clients in Australia. So first of all, consistent currency results. You can see here we've got share on the top bar chart, reach on the bottom line bar, and from when we launched or pre-launch survey 1 and 2, and then surveys 3 onwards, you can see that the share results for our big networks, commercial and non-commercial, remain very, very similar to what they've always been, as has our reach. So we have been able to keep consistent currency results, but let's hear from one of our clients.
Hello from 9 Radio. To GfK's credit, the change or launch of the hybrid methodology was business as usual and an incredibly smooth transition.
See?
Hello from AON. The biggest impact has been the credibility of the survey methodology, from paper-based to digitally led surveys, and the engine room now being turbocharged with millions of devices and billions of data points. This definitely helps us loosen the shackles that were keeping us chained to old-school positioning.
Okay, that kind of jumped ahead before I could introduce that slide. But did we enhance the credibility and the evolution? You've heard from ARN, but also let's hear from...
Hi from IPG Media Brands. Radio360 will now reinforce and support the conversations we are having with clients about the need to have a very specific audio strategy that looks at all areas of the ecosystem.
Hello from Dentsu in Melbourne. It is a great step forward for the industry, and we look forward to applying these new learnings to our audio planning and buying moving forward.
I think it's finished now. I think you can tell the Australian accent's not great on AI, is it? Won't replace me too quickly. And then the final objective is, have we built revenue? Now, this is always the ultimate objective for every industry body. You can see some pretty consistent results. I'd love to say all of this uplift was directly related to Radio360, but of course no one can claim that directly because we know economic changes happen in the market without us. But it has started to change the direction of the conversation, and the future is positive.
Hello from the Nova Network. We will bring more advertisers into audio, who only may be considered digital media as visual, because now we can reliably show the number of people that are having a connected audio experience.
Okay.
Hello from 9 Radio. Radio360 is the first time we have been able to split out the streaming audience. With the overlay of data and technology, we will be able to trade that audience separately to the linear audience. It's a question of when and how we do that, and that'll be over the coming months as people get comfortable with the data set.
Okay. So now let's transform the understanding of our audience, and this will flow hopefully quite nicely into Jo's section. We're at the precipice of change in Australia. Our networks are now working collaboratively together about how we can enhance or how they can grow their revenue share in the digital space. I'm going to take you through some new insights that we have now for our streaming audiences, and it's really begun the conversation more within the industry, having a better understanding of what their competitors are achieving in a streaming environment. So this is giving you the proportion of streamers for each of our networks and then the age profile. They've always had their own digital insights, and radio stations already have that. But now they're able to see how they fit in a competitive environment. We know that talk and music listeners have the same propensity to stream. It's not all music that's being streamed. We're also seeing talk listeners. 22% of them are actually streaming and 24% of music streaming. So very similar proportions of their audiences. But we know that different formats are having different shapes of day when we look at streaming audiences, and this begins the concept of how do I better utilise this streaming audience and better target our audiences via streaming and through programmatic trading. And lastly, what proportion of my listeners are exclusively streaming? Now, this number is quite small, and it's actually grown since I built this slide 12 months ago. It's almost doubled for some of the networks. So this is the proportion of listeners that are only streaming. They're the only ones that you can reach via the streaming platform for that particular radio station. And then we've been able to give them deeper insights now 1 year on into the understanding of radio listeners. Now these are two examples now that you would normally expect video to be pulling audience to. The first one is the Olympics. Now in Australia, because of the time difference, the Olympics happened midnight to dawn. Traditionally a very quiet time on radio as well. The orange line is pre-game activity and the blue line is during the Olympics. So people continue to tune into radio to listen to sport rather than watch it on television. The second image is a crisis that unfolded in one of our shopping centres. I won't go into too much detail, but it was one of the biggest tragic events that's happened in our history in Australia for a very long time. You can see when the event began to unfold at 3 o'clock, the orange line is people tuning into radio compared to people tuning in on an average Saturday pre the event. So radio is constantly pulling audience in, and streaming isn't the be-all and end. Sorry, streaming services like Spotify, etc., are not killing the radio star. Again, I'll talk about that more tomorrow. So what are the challenges in the future for us? In preparation of today, I spoke with a few of our contacts or our clients. The message was clear. We need better data enrichment to have better commercialisation of our streaming assets. We need to educate the market more. We're almost ready. Very soon we're going to see a lot more programmatic trading and more digitising of our audiences happening. But we also have to re-educate our media advertisers, the advertising agencies, and they need to plan for audience, not just platform, and stop separating traditional radio from digital radio. So where does that lead GfK and Radio 360? So how do we meet this challenge? So we want to increase the revenue pie. We need a new commercial pathway. We need a streaming enrichment solution. How can we take the great work that we've done with Radio 360 and expand that further into some audience attribution from our modelling? And how can we better commercialise the streaming radio and help the radio industry? So we have designed a network ID proof of concept. We will hopefully be running that later this year, where we take the raw streams of data collected from our Sensic tag, our SDK tag, we clean it, we model it, we create a unique ID for each stream, and then we feed it back to the SSP and DSP for potential programmatic trading. So this is what we're working on in the very near future with CRA. My apologies, there we go. So that leads me to my last slide. I just want to highlight data integration is really the key to future audience measurement. We have already shown success with integrating streaming data. We're looking at this network ID process. What's going to happen next? It's whatever the industry need. It's designed to be flexible and adaptable, and really evolution comes from trading on what we already have established and a very strong existing framework. So I think we'll have questions at the end, is that right, Peter? And I'm going to hand over to Jo now.
Thank you. Is that your water? Yep. Thank you so much, Deb. Wow, that was a really insightful presentation on research and Radio 360. Peter said that we are a successful market in Australia. Yes, well, I will absolutely agree with that. Today, hot off the press, the IAB digital audio figures were released for F24, and it showed that digital audio grew 24% in Australia. Really impressive, especially in these market conditions. That was driven by podcasting, which is growing at 32%. So that's all of digital audio's numbers. Our digital audio numbers for the last quarter grew 27%. So our commercial radio industry is ahead of the game from a selling perspective in revenue. So we're really excited by that. As I said, the market conditions in Australia are really, really tough, as I'm sure they are in every other market around the world. So we are super excited with those results. So I am here to talk about our strategy of how we protect, modernise and grow our market in Australia even further. So what we developed was messaging to agencies and advertisers. I'm at CRA, I've been there for 3 years. Prior to that, I was 18 years at Omnicom, so I've got a fairly good understanding of what agencies are looking for. So, how are we doing this? Evidence-based research. We need to tell them why they should advertise on radio. What are the benefits? We need to educate them on the role of audio. How do I plan it? When do I use it, etc. And also have industry engagement, which is really important that we talk to advertisers and also agencies about what we're doing. We need to change advertiser and agency perception around our channel's effectiveness. That will increase our revenue. So there are a number of different initiatives that we've embarked upon across the last 3 or 4 months. Firstly, the Audio Edge. Now this serves as a white paper, but also an event which is held in Melbourne and also in Brisbane, and are now planning one for Perth. We are going out with a campaign with Mark Ritson. Who here knows Mark Ritson? Well, good, excellent. Oh, thank you. He is a very well-known marketing professor, very well-known in Australia, especially in agencies. He's got a whole MBA program that he runs. So having him endorse it, and the 11% factor, was really impressive. Then we looked to do a study with analytic partners, and I'll talk a little bit more about that and who they are in the coming slides. And lastly, a Power of Radio campaign that has other advertisers endorsing why they use radio. And it's a bit of a different change to what we'd done previously. And last but not least, the infinite dial. Oh my God, 8 years of the infinite dial. Who would have thought it could stick around for that long? But we love it. Firstly, the Audio Edge. Well, what is it? It is a white paper, essentially, that talks about the role of audio throughout the marketing funnel. It's a deep insight in terms of what role what radio plays throughout the funnel, but also able for agencies to leverage audio throughout the marketing funnel. We looked at everywhere from awareness to advocacy, consideration, loyalty. And we looked at this across a number of different platforms. So we've got out of home, online, video, BVOD, the socials, TV, and of course, radio. Now, there is a huge amount of data up there, and you'd be very pleased to know that I'm not going to go through every single one of those stats today. We would be here all night. But I would say there are some really interesting key data points in here that shows that radio really does punch above its weight when it comes to these areas in the marketing funnel. So firstly, let's go to awareness. Oops, I've pressed the wrong button. There we go. So, from awareness perspective, radio reaches 82% of Australians, which is really great in terms of that scale that it can deliver. Using Nielsen's Comms Point data, it shows us that radio boosts 58% awareness. That's 49% more than TikTok. And let's face it, TikTok is the flavour of the month, or possibly the flavour of the year. Moving on to consideration, we saw here that radio drives 48% consideration. Now, this is a really critical part of the funnel. It's where consumers weigh up their options and decide what products they're going to buy. Here, radio drives 48% consideration, 20% more than out of home. Moving on to conversion, here, radio drives 54% conversion. Now, that's through our trusted on-air talent and our compelling content. And that is 23% higher than Instagram. And lastly, loyalty. Now, it is critical for advertisers to foster that loyalty, to encourage repeat purchases. Here, Nielsen data shows us that radio drives 42% loyalty. That's 40% more than BVOD. So those who don't know what BVOD is, it's broadcast video on demand, and that's where a lot of the money is also going, because it's going out of broadcast TV into the broadcast video on demand TV, which is the television networks, because they are definitely doing it tough at the moment in Australia. So let's talk about that. Mark Ritson talked about radio being the sidekick, the ultimate sidekick, and I'll talk about that in a second. And what is it about a sidekick? Well, where would we be? Where would Batman be without Robin? And what about Dr. Spock? Arguably the more popular than Captain Kirk, and Chewbacca. And let's not forget Tinkerbell, who sprinkled her fairy dust so that others could fly. Mark Ritson talks about the most compelling role that radio plays is supporting other media channels. And in fact, putting 11% of investment into radio will increase your brand effectiveness. I am not going to do that justice, so let's hear from Mark himself.
Sidekicks do a really important thing and save the day and make everything great. And they usually don't get the recognition they deserve for achieving that success. When you add radio to an excess share of voice campaign, you get a catalytic effect across the whole campaign. A little bit of radio makes the whole thing work better. And second, because it's radio, the amount of money you need to divert to radio to get this boost is relatively small. Radio, like all good sidekicks, kind of underplays itself a little bit. Yeah? It does a really good job, better than most of us would have thought. So compared to the average ACA campaign, if you've got excess share of voice and 11% of it is put into radio, only 11, you will see, on average, a doubled effectiveness score in terms of very large business effects.
Double effectiveness or very large business effects. That is a really powerful message. And why is 11% so good? Well, we're currently at around 6, 7 or 8%, depending on what data source you looked at. But really, if we gave the market a figure that they could aspire to, that's where we would aim for them to start putting that budget against radio. And 11% feels pretty good to us. So that is what we're aiming for in Australia. So how does radio play this role of the ultimate sidekick? It's all about adding that extra reach. And let's face it, that's what media agencies want to do for their advertisers. So we looked at the data, using Nielsen's ComsPoint data, and found that radio adds an additional 14% to a Facebook campaign. 47% to TikTok. So you use radio with TikTok, you're automatically going to get more reach. No downside there. 11% to out-of-home, 27% to BVOD, 25% to Instagram, 4.2% to online video, and lastly, nearly 10% to TV. And in a market where TV is going down and you can't get that reach that you had before, this is where radio comes into its own. And by adding us to the schedules, so we tell the agencies, your reach will be increased. Now, in a market in Australia, definitely, where some of the traditional audiences are declining and CPMs, or cost per thousands, are increasing, it's really important to choose channels that are both cost efficient, deliver scale, and also can do the conversions. So we looked at Nielsen data to understand what each media channel could offer. So firstly, TV. Big scale there still, even though they're losing audience, they've still got a big scale. Not as cost efficient as they used to be. Looking at online video and BVOD, really expensive. Like that is the more premium asset that agencies are buying because it's like there's not many ads, etc. Then we looked at out-of-home. Out-of-home in Australia is on fire, and that's the programmatic part of out-of-home. Every static face, pretty much for the most part, has been converted to a digital face, and you get 10 or so faces on those ads. And then lastly, not lastly yet, looked at the socials. TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram, really, really cheap CPMs, but scale-wise, it's a bit hit and miss. And then lastly, broadcast radio. Who'd have thought? So you've got the scale, that's the size of the bubble. The cost efficiency is down the bottom here, you can see that. And the conversion rate, most importantly, is along the side here. And you can see here that radio really does punch above its weight in terms of being both cost efficient and also delivering that conversion which advertisers really want. Loads of information there. If you want a copy of that, please do feel free to scan the QR code. It's about 16 or so pages in the report. We did it for agencies because there was a gap in the market. I mean, when I was at Omnicom and I was head of audio, people used to say to me, what is the role of audio in marketing funding? When do I use it? What do I use it for? Which brings me on nicely to our next initiative that we've just run. Analytic Partners. Anybody heard of Analytic Partners apart from the Aussies? No. So Analytic Partners are a media mix modelling company. They look at what the return on investment is per media channel. So if you had like 100 ringgit invested into TV, they would model that to understand what that 100 delivered. Ideally, you want it to be more than 100, but if it's less, that means it's performed poorly from an ROI perspective. What we were hearing is that radio's ROI was not that great. So that 100, sometimes 75. So we had a meeting with Analytic Partners to understand, why are you telling your clients, your advertisers, that we're no good? What's happening? And he said to me, they're just buying it incorrectly. They're not using radio the right way. So we set about to dispel some of those myths, to try and prove some hypotheses. And we talked to 2 of his advertisers so far, and we've got another 2 in the pipeline, to understand what we could do differently and get better results. So we partnered with McDonald's and Analytic Partners to do a test campaigns, and the other campaign we did was for Dan Murphy's. Now, Dan Murphy's is a place that sells wine and beer. So firstly, onto McDonald's, they had a campaign that was already booked. Surprise Fries, I believe it was called. And the idea was to understand what would happen if we increased the brand spots and reduced the price and product spots. So the media agency had booked in a campaign with a brand weight of activity, and Analytic Partners said, it's too low. They need to have higher. They've gone too far down the price and product. They need to increase the spot weights against the brand. So we spoke to the networks and said, hi, can you do us a little favour? We are trying to prove this hypothesis that if you increase the weights of brand ads, the results for ROI will be better. So the networks essentially put a whole load of no-charge spots to air for Macca's, along with their paid spots. And what we found was absolutely incredible. We found, so the pre-radio number here is 100, that's the baseline. Increasing the brand spots had a 13% impact in a positive way. So now we've got a situation where whatever spot weights they were using for brand for radio before, they're now going to, in the future, increase those weights to make sure there's a better effect for radio. But not just that, the most impressive part of this, for me anyway, is that not just did it do a job for radio, it also did a job for other media channels. So the synergy across TV, social and online video also was increased. 14% increase for TV, 12% for social and 3% to online video. It was a win all around. Radio networks won, client won, Analytic Partners won, and of course CRA won, because we had to prove something and it actually was right. We are now marketing these results like you would not believe, because this is the first time we've actually embarked upon this type of a test. So hypothesis 2, this is for Dan Murphy's. As I said, they sell wine and beer. And traditionally, they've only ever used radio for price and product, for specials they've got on sale, etc. They had a new brand campaign that they were launching, and they had not planned on using radio. So Analytic Partners said to them, I think that we can get a better result overall if we use radio for the brand campaign as well. And his hypothesis was that radio can add synergy across other channels for the new brand campaign launch. So let's see what happened here. Oh my goodness, look at that. 19% improvement on the synergy on radio on out of home, 18% on TV, and 14% in online video. That's because they used radio for brand, which they never had before. Client really impressed, and they're now going to be planning to use it for a December campaign. So again, everyone wins out of this. We have this hypothesis that we need to go to the market and show them if you do it differently, you might just get a better result. Now onto the power of radio, and this is where we talk about, advertisers endorsing our medium. So why do you actually advertise on air? We put an ad to air, and ideally encourages other advertisers to also advertise on radio. Previously, we'd used like the Tile campaign. What's that guy called, Richard? Richard? The Tile from Ambit, the Tiles. Walker, thank you. Frank Walker from Walker Tiles. I won't do the ad. But yes, all those sort of SME type businesses. What we're doing now is trying to look at advertisers that are more blue chip, more aspirational. So if an advertiser like Frank Walker heard that ANZ was using radio, there must be something right. So we went out and we moved ahead and worked with a number of key advertisers, which they're not there, and to put them to air. And that's resulted in a number of new inquiries coming through. So we've got A2 Milk, Hendrick's Gin, ANZ, and the last one escapes my mind, but I'm sure it's very impactful. And lastly, onto the infinite dial. So 8 years old, you'd think, God, is that thing still going on? What could you possibly be saying now? A bit outdated? No, not at all. It's our way of showing the market the relevancy and the consistency of radio. It's a really trusted source because it's from another source and it looks at things that are not just radio. So music streaming, for example, which I'll get onto. So we looked here, and what this showed us is for total audio in the market, there is a reach of 94%. So people never knew before, what is the total reach of all audio in the market? So now we've got a number for them, 94%. But I'm really pleased to say, to people who listen to radio, both broadcast and streaming, 81%. So that's where the scale is. And then you look at TV, 77%. Who'd have thought there'd be the day where broadcast radio's reach is higher than TV? Goodness me. And then you've got streaming video services, which makes a lot of sense. That's absolutely growing in that area. Then we've got watch-on-demand free-to-air TV, no surprise, and ad-supported music streaming. Let's just call that Spotify. That's what it is for the most part in Australia anyway. 39%. That's the ad-supported. And that's because a lot of people listening to Spotify are paying, so you can't reach them through advertising. Talking about them, we can see here that the reach of Spotify is only 16%, so 4 million there. Online live radio streaming, however, 27%, and that's growing. And you can see here total radio at 81%. That's 5 times more Australians listening to radio than the ad-supported Spotify. Let's look at this online streaming for radio, and it is definitely growing, and as Deb mentioned before, so back in 2021, only 15% people radio streaming. That is growing enormously. So you see now, in 2024, we've got a massive 31% of people listening to radio via streaming. Why does that matter? Well, Deb touched on it before. Programmatic advertising, digital audio advertising is critical. Most agencies want to use some form of digital. So having a base of 31%, we're getting some scale, and we're also offering them an alternative or a complementary offer to Spotify. So a couple of years ago, when you talk to an agency person, what's your audio strategy? What's your digital audio strategy? Spotify, tick that box, move on. Not anymore. We now have a really strong argument for us to go to agencies and say, we've got a strong audience too, we've got the same type of targeting capabilities as Spotify. And we're seeing more and more of us getting more and more with Spotify money, but also getting onto the briefs with Spotify. Now we're going into podcasting. Purpose of this slide is to really show that where Australia is in podcasting. So you think that the US is definitely ahead, and they had a much quicker start to us, but you can see now that's plateauing. And Australia is definitely caught up, and it now goes head-to-head with the US. Cars, and I know that Nick's going to be talking about cars this afternoon, is all about the connected car. It is the entertainment system outside the home. And people are now fighting for that real estate on that dashboard in the connected car. What we were really excited about was that 88% of people are still choosing to listen to radio in the car. So radio needs to have that real estate, that prime real estate on the dashboard. 50% are choosing to do music streaming. Podcast is growing at 37%. 30% CDs, I don't even know who owns a CD anymore, but that's what it is, and then downloaded music. So for us, having that prominent position in the car is critical for us, for our audience growth, and also to maintain our relevance to advertisers and also agencies. And then the online evolution here. So how are they listening to radio in the car? Well, 16% streaming back in 2022, and a 75% increase in streaming in just 2 years. So we know that Australians have a deep love affair with radio. It's part of their daily habit. Get in the car, turn the radio on, listen to my station, move it around. We're not going far at all. Smart speaker ownership is also growing. As you can see, we're also head-to-head with the US in terms of the number of smart speakers that we own. And we are seeing that more and more people are listening to radio via those smart speakers, which also opens the door for new digital opportunities in terms of targeting. So my last slide here is radio listenership is stronger than ever, and that's thanks to the format diversification that we've seen and will continue to see throughout Australia. Thank you very much for listening and having us today. Appreciate it. Oh, 10 minutes. Ten minutes. Early.
Yeah.
I would smash through it. Shall I do it again?
Yeah. That was like...
Did anyone want me to see those
That was a
slides?
lot. I have like huge amount of questions. But I think it's only fair to ask the room first if there are any questions for our two esteemed panelists. No?
That's okay, they're blown away. Oh no, here we go.
There's one.
Oh yeah.
It's hard to see with the...
Hi, that was a really, really nice presentation, and I'm from India. We have so many formats of radio station, but I think as a nation we're struggling with data. In your presentation as well as yours, you have highlighted the importance of getting data right. When we go out into the market, we'll have to actually show the listenership pattern and stuff. Do you think technological boost is also important to take radio to people? Because as far as India is concerned, what's happened is they have taken the radio app from the smartphone. They've taken it out. And there are music streaming apps in there. And radio listening is mostly in the car, though India's household radio listenership was also very high. So in a scenario like this, what is the research proposition that you would actually propose or suggest? Because radio diary methods, as you say, are a little dated. So we don't have many digital radios. We're actually, on FM radio stations and community radio stations. So what is that research methodology that we can try as far as Indian market is concerned and get the listenership data?
Okay, I'll tackle this one.
Go, Deb.
Yeah. Look, I don't think there's one perfect audience measurement system anymore. And that's what we proved in Australia with our hybrid audience measurement system. So there is a lot of negativity in the market around the diary. It is still the most globally used methodology to capture audience measurement because it is so holistic. But what it doesn't do is bring that technical aspect that you're talking about. And so when we set about doing this measurement innovation program that we launched about 7 years ago now, we saw that the listening patterns captured from other measurement tools, whether that be a wearable device, like a meter, the streaming log data that we collect directly from the radio stations, or the diary, or an app on someone's phone, we tested that as well, we saw the listening patterns were almost identical. So we saw the same shape of day coming through from all types, but just the volume was different because of compliance and just because of the way that different audience tools work. So the key then is to bring different measurement systems together that's appropriate for your market. So it might not be a diary, it might be a recall methodology where we ask people what you've listened to in the past 7 days, and then take your streaming information and merge those two data sets together to create your total audience measurement system. There's not one single one anymore. And I don't think a meter is the answer either. I know the US have one, and there's other countries as well that have them, but a hybrid system actually enables you to capture everything. A meter misses things like headphone listening, for example. And you might leave your meter at home, or it's buried deep in your handbag, whereas the radio diary enables us to close those gaps, or a recall methodology enables that as well.
I'd also add to that maybe the same in India, but all the radio networks have got their own app, and then there's an app that's for the industry called the Radio app. So the way to listen to radio in Australia is quite simple. So you go to Nova or you go to the Radio app to choose your station. So I think that's helped the growth.
Yeah, we're very lucky in Australia that we have such a unified collaborative industry body with commercial radio and audio, and the networks are very eager, maybe? They're happy to work together for the better of the industry.
Collaborative.
That's the word. And Radio app has really enabled the streaming element of live commercial radio and for our non-commercial broadcaster to really integrate themselves into mobile phones, which is a fast-growing device to listen to the radio for us. Yeah. I hope that answered.
If I may, I supplement. I think also that you are very lucky in Australia to have such a collaborative endeavor, because the question of PPMs or diaries is also a matter of cost in many countries. Yeah. So we are all looking enviously towards,
we can spend as much as you want, or as little as you want.
Yes. I'm sure you can. But that is also, of course, a big part of that question.
Yeah. Well, it got to the point where the CEOs of the networks knew that if they did nothing, they were going to lose revenue because there's a huge amount of backlash in the market about us having an archaic measurement system. And success for Radio 360 essentially is they don't say that anymore. No. So no longer are we known as the diary people. We can now say that we have updated our methodology to modernise it. And so apart from doing a better job, it's also changed the perception of the industry. So the CEOs had a greater good at the heart of that decision.
There is a lesson to be learned for all of us in the Australian example that yes, it is expensive, but through collaboration and also through enhanced measurements, you can get better results, and through that, better monetization.
Yeah, it changes the conversation. It changes the tone of the conversation around radio.
Yes, I would like that in my country. Yes, there's another question down there. You can't have too many questions because, but no. You're first.
Kia ora, Justine Murray from New Zealand. I'm just interested in selling radio and breakfast shows that go on to become podcasts. Are they just as sellable?
Yeah, definitely. So we talk about those sort of programs as being reach extensions. So on the Radio CRA website, we've got a tool called the Audio Planning Tool that looks at if you're buying broadcast radio and then you add podcasts to it and then you add free music streaming to it, it shows you the incremental reach. So advertising agencies are all looking for incremental reach, and that's the great sell about radio and podcasting, especially for catch-up radio. You're unlikely to listen to the real radio show and then go and listen to it as a podcast. So yeah, and that's worked really well for all of the networks.
Hands down. No hands. I don't see any hands, so it's me, Mike.
Go for it.
Good. One of the things you were talking about was these analytic partners.
Oh, yeah.
That's really interesting. I haven't heard that concept before and what it is. Could you elaborate a little bit what it is and how you do it? And because it sounds like that has had a tremendous effect in this transition.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so as I mentioned, analytic partners are a company that are appointed by an advertiser. So they are a true third party. They don't work for the agency. And what their job is to understand which mediums, channels, are working better than others. So the ones that are performing better or stronger or delivering a better return on investment, they're the channels that the media agency will be told to use in the future. So the ones that are performing poorly, as had been the case with some radio campaigns, that would be the first medium that was taken off the plan moving forward. The recommendation from analytic partners were these 4 channels are doing really well, that one over there, not so well. And they would put up the indexes, so using that 100 again, a couple above 100, a couple below 100. The ones below 100, you're losing money. You're investing $100 and you're getting less back. So that's the whole thing about a media mix modelling. It understands which mediums are actually contributing to the growth and the return on the investment. And the radio studies showed that not just did radio had a better ROI, but also had a synergistic effect across other channels that had audio in them, which is really powerful.
So basically they're paid by the advertisers?
Correct, yeah.
But you still managed to, because you had the better product, to convince them?
Yeah, so they're paid by the advertisers, so literally picked up the phone to analytic partners and said, can we talk please? And he's actually very pro-radio, and believed that we just weren't buying it correctly. The strategy behind it wasn't right. So the radio networks then put in airtime at no charge to do the study. We didn't pay analytic partners at all. We couldn't, because then it doesn't become third party and transparent. It was literally a partnership where let's try a couple of tests to see whether the hypothesis that analytic partners had come up with was true. And the networks are fully on board with supporting the campaigns with no charge airtime to demonstrate it, which is great.
That's really
cost them nothing.
Well, no, but and the result was, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, damn. I think the time is up. Any more questions for our esteemed panel? Last chance. They're going to leave.
We'll be there later.
We'll be around.
Thank you very much.
You're very
really
welcome.